Hi, I'm Kathleen Treseder, and I'm a professor at University of California, Irvine. I'm going to talk to you today about community choice energy and how it can benefit Orange County cities and also help, as a co-benefit, convert OC to renewable energy. All right, let me get my slides set up here. Okay. So I should also mention that I'm a member of the Irvine Green Ribbon Environmental Committee. Okay, so I just want to tell you a little bit about myself to start out. My family has a history of service in the military, a strong history. So my father and all 5 of his brothers all served in wartime. So my 5 uncles served in World War II, and my father served in the Korean War. And one of my uncles was actually killed in a battle in the Pacific. I had other uncles who fought in D-Day and in the Battle of the Bulge. And when I was growing up, we'd all get together. We'd get together in my backyard, sit on folding chairs and eat slices of watermelon. And my uncles and my father would talk about serving in the war. And, some of the stories were really horrific. But what really struck me and surprised me was that they often talked fondly about the time that they were in the service. And some of them said it was the best time of their lives. And I never really understood that. I thought that, war was hell. It's hard for me to think of what would be good about it. But as I listened to them more and over the years, it became apparent to me that they really have felt a strong sense of purpose when they were fighting. And that brought them together with the other people they were fighting with. And they ended up making a strong bond. And I came to sense that that was what they were remembering so fondly. And so I grew up with this, and I was always taught that you should make sacrifices, you should serve our country however you can, leverage your talents and your skills the best you can to help the country. And so when I was growing up, I wanted to join the Air Force, and I actually applied to the Air Force Academy, and I was going through that whole process. There were multiple steps, and I was getting ready for the physical fitness, and I passed the physical, and I was going through the process. And then the Berlin Wall fell right as I was in the middle of it, and the USSR disbanded. And so I really had to think a lot about what I wanted to do with my life. It didn't seem like serving in the military was at that time the most important way to help the country. Instead, I was hearing a lot about climate change. It was really coming into public knowledge. And so I decided that I would switch my career goals and become a scientist who studied climate change as a way to serve my country and my community. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I've decided that the best way that I can do this in this moment is to help advocate for this program called Community Choice Energy. And the reason that I am so supportive of it is because it will help Orange County convert to renewable energy and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that we release into the atmosphere. And that can slow climate change. But there are many, many other reasons to support community choice energy, and I think this program really has something for everybody. And I know that the problem of climate change can seem very daunting. It's a global issue, and a lot of times it can feel frustrating because it's hard to think of how one person can really help. But the thing is that there are millions of people all over the world who who are working on this problem. And they're doing it locally just like we are. They're working on their cities, they're working on their counties and their communities. And we're all working together. And that adds up. And that really does make a difference. And we've made great progress here in Orange County so far. So I'm really excited to tell you about it. Okay, so I'm part of this group called OC Clean Power. And OC Clean Power is just an umbrella organization. It's a casual organization of many, many different community groups. And there's lots of different kinds of groups. There are businesses. There's a school district, Tustin Unified School District. We have environmental groups like Surfrider, which is not too surprising. We have UCI groups like the UCI Science Policy Groups. We have a bunch of school clubs like the University High Ecological Club. Bonita Canyon Elementary School Life Club is one of our partners, and the Korean American Center. That's just among several. I think we're up to something like 40 groups. We all partner together. Okay, and we've all have a mission of adopting community choice energy throughout Orange County. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about community choice energy now. Community choice energy, it's simply a program that allows individual cities to stop buying power from SoCal Edison or whatever utility they usually have to buy power from, and instead buy power from energy providers of their choosing. And so the nice thing about that is that the city can then buy power directly from renewable energy power companies, and a lot of times that's actually cheaper than what they're paying right now. Okay, so now I'm just going to go into some of the details. So normally, cities are required to buy, and by cities I mean all the residents and businesses within the city too. So we're required to buy energy from a certain utility provider. And so in my case, I live in Irvine. We're required to buy energy from SoCal Edison. Some people down in southern Orange County are required to buy power from San Diego Gas and Electric. We don't really have a choice under most cases. So this means that the utility company has a monopoly. Then the utility company transports that power over their infrastructure, over their power lines to us, and then they bill us and then we pay them. So that's the standard arrangement. Community choice energy changes that. If a city council votes to set up a community choice energy program, what that city can do instead is buy power from individual providers. So they might buy power from a solar farm or a wind farm or something like that of their choosing. The power is still delivered over the utility lines. So SoCal Edison or SDG&E, for instance, would still deliver the power over their grid to the consumers, like the businesses and the residents. And then SoCal Edison or SDG&E would send the billing to the consumers. Consumers would pay. Part of that money would go to the utilities for transporting the energy over the grid, and part of that money would go to the energy providers like the solar farms or the gas farms. Okay, so this means then that the customers get to choose which energy sources they use. They get to have the stability of using this established grid, and we basically have more local control, and we can choose to buy cleaner energy. Okay, so why would we want to go to the trouble to do this? Well, the current system does have some downsides. First of all, it is not incredibly stable, and I think that we saw good examples of this last fire season when we'd have fires in Southern California, and when there were fires happening, if the big transportation grid lines were being jeopardized, for SoCal Edison or SDG&E. SoCal Edison would have a power outage. They cut off all the power to those big transmission lines, and then all the cities and people downstream would be without power. And sometimes it was with no notice, and definitely the cities and the consumers did not have a say in whether they would lose power or not. So right now we don't have a lot of local control over responding to things like wildfires. Same thing with heat waves. If heat waves happen and overload the electrical system right now because people are using air conditioning, for example, then the utilities decide to do rolling blackouts, and they decide which cities they're going to shut off power to at which time. And again, the cities don't have a lot of control over that. And this is a problem, especially for residents who may be on ventilators or who are susceptible to heat stroke. The cities don't have a way of protecting those consumers, and a lot of times the utilities don't know about those residents. They don't necessarily have a good way of finding out who needs that power for medical purposes. Another downside of the current system is that right now, these are monopolies. SoCal Edison has a monopoly, SDG&E has a monopoly, and so they get to fix their prices for energy. And it's no surprise SDG&E has the highest energy rates for the state of California. SoCal Edison has the second highest. They are looking into, SoCal Edison is looking into increasing their rates by, I think, something like 20% next year. And there's not a lot that we as consumers can say about that. We simply have to pay that price. Then that money then goes to the shareholders for these utilities. They're using it to make a profit. They're using it to pay their CEOs. They're not using it in the community. That money goes elsewhere. Okay. So right now, the utilities actually have little incentive to operate efficiently. Now, some of the benefits of community choice energy is that we can develop a more resilient energy supply. For instance, we can choose to, say, buy energy from local providers, like local solar farms, like this one, or local wind farms. And so this means if we have energy supply within our own community, if there's a fire in the Sierras or the foothills, that wouldn't necessarily affect our local community because we'd be using our own power sources. We wouldn't be susceptible to those big transmission lines being cut down. There's also an environmental benefit. So if we're using these renewable energy sources, first of all, we don't have the pollution that's created by burning fossil fuels. That is definitely a health problem for many people, especially people with asthma. It also cuts down on greenhouse gases. And I think Maverick, who is a member of one of our partners, the Bonita Canyon Life Club, he, I think, said it best when he wrote this postcard to the mayor of Irvine. He says, "Dear Mayor of Irvine City, we would like you to try to start using wind or solar energy. Not saying you have to, but it will help the environment," from Maverick. So I think Maverick really has the right idea. We don't have to, it's our choice, but we can definitely help the environment by buying energy from these sources. I also want to say that this energy is cheaper. Renewable energy right now is actually cheaper than conventional fossil fuel energy. So that brings me to a number of the other benefits of community choice energy. One of the reasons that I like community choice energy so much is because my personal philosophy is I like to unite people. I feel uncomfortable with the really strong divides right now between people on the right and the left. I believe that there's much more in common between us than you might think from reading stories in the media. We have a lot of things that I think we can all agree on are beneficial. One is local control. We all want to choose what sort of services we get, where we get them from. We can align them with our values then. We also like freedom of choice for the customer. We can choose what sort of power mixes we use, where we get that power from. We can even choose to opt out. If there's a customer who, for some strange reason that I don't understand, loves SoCal Edison, really likes the service that they get, then they can certainly stay with SoCal Edison. They have that choice. We also have competition in the marketplace. If we have many different energy suppliers that are independent, that are competing with one another, that will drive prices downward and probably improve customer service as well. We'd have local jobs and economic development. You know, the solar industry right now has many more jobs in Orange County than the gas and coal industry. And we'd like to keep it that way. We'd like to have those jobs jumpstart our economy. We also have a lot of potential cost savings for businesses because, again, renewable energy right now is cheaper than what we're currently paying through SoCal Edison. Okay, and because there are so many benefits that I think resonate with many, many people, we have good bipartisan support in Orange County for community choice energy. For instance, Don Wagner, our former mayor of Irvine, he's now on the OC Board of Supervisors. He's a Republican. He's been in support of community choice energy. When he was on Irvine City Council, every single time community choice energy came up for a vote, he voted in favor of it. And it's largely because of these freedom of choice issues. Mayor Christina Shea, also a Republican, is strongly in support of community choice energy, as is Vice Mayor Mike Carroll. He's actually leading Irvine's efforts in this. Huntington Beach City Council member Kim Carr is in favor of it, and also Fullerton City Council member Ahmad Zahra is in favor of it, and many, many other city council members, or too many to mention here, have voted to proceed in their own cities. Okay, so how do we pay for community choice energy? Well, first of all, I want to say it is not government subsidized. There are no taxes involved. We simply use the current revenue stream. We have all these customers right now paying for energy. They're paying that money to SoCal Edison or SDG&E. Instead, that money will go to this community choice energy program. So it's self-supporting from an existing revenue stream. And in fact, the electricity bills will look almost exactly the same for the customer. It's just that there will be lines in the electricity bills that will say community choice energy program instead of SoCal Edison. And cities can even hire a firm to manage the program in terms of the revenue generation from this program. The expense of hiring a firm or hiring employees is relatively small. Okay, so what are the benefits in terms of renewable energy use? Well, in most community choice energy programs that have been started and that we could do here in Orange County, the consumers can actually choose among different packages. They can decide what their power mix is, how much renewable energy they want to use. So for instance, in Sonoma County, where there's an established community choice energy program, there are two options for consumers. There's one package that's 42% renewables, 49% hydro, and that is a little bit cheaper than option 2, which is 100% local renewables. And so option 1, I think that the customers save something like 4% on the standard utility bill, and option 2 I think is about equal to what the standard utility bill is, or a little bit lower depending on the year. And so you could, if your city switches over to community choice energy, the same time they switch over, you could have 100% renewable energy for your household or business. This means that you do not have to pay for solar panels, say, for your house, or solar panels for your business. You don't have to do that to be using solar power. How nice would it be to be able to just flip on the switch in your house or turn on the air conditioning and like not have to worry about releasing greenhouse gases by doing so? Just simply do that because your city has taken care of it. There are also a lot of really neat consumer perks for people who are buying energy from community choice energy programs. For instance, Sonoma customers, they actually get paid to charge their electric vehicles. And Sonoma Community Choice Energy has made deals with car dealerships in the area where if you're a Sonoma Community Choice Energy customer, you can go to a car dealership and get a substantial subsidy on an EV car. And you know, there were people buying EV cars in Sonoma for $9,000, which is incredible. We can also use this program to provide support for communities, especially those that are vulnerable for climate change. The deal is because cities will save a fair bit of money by switching to renewable energy. Part of that savings, the cities can choose to invest in energy programs in their cities, and they can choose to invest in energy programs that support more vulnerable communities. Right here, this is a map of communities that are particularly vulnerable to harmful effects of climate change and environmental damage. All the orange areas here are those communities. These have been designated by the state of California. Right now, these communities are currently experiencing health effects from pollution and other things, like they're getting asthma and other respiratory problems. By switching to renewable energy and greening the grid and greening transportation, by using this money that cities will make, we can help support these communities better. For instance, we can use revenues to build EV charging stations in rental housing. So for instance, a lot of people now, they're living in apartments. If they get an electric vehicle, they don't really have a place to charge it. We can use the revenues to build these charging stations. We can use the revenues to expand public transportation, and especially even using buses that run on clean fuels. We can also use revenues to set up microgrids in retirement communities. Microgrids are self-supporting grids where there's actually an energy supply within a little area. And we can put that, say, in a trailer park or an area where there are a lot of retirees that rely on ventilators and other health supports. And that way we can be sure that even if the power goes off in the surrounding area, their power will not go off. And you know, we can leave it up to these communities to decide what's best for them, what would support them best. Okay, so how does Southern California look right now in terms of adopting community choice energy? Well, the good news is that in Orange County, we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel. There are community choice energy programs all around us that are either operational or very close to being operational. In fact, we call Orange County the hole in the donut in terms of community choice energy. So we have, for instance, Los Angeles, just north of us, has an operational community choice energy program. The city of San Diego does as well. The county of San Diego is investigating to have the whole county be community choice energy. And there are areas in Riverside where there are operational programs. So we have the expertise around to draw from in setting up these programs. And I should also mention the community choice energy community is very generous. And so people who already have community choice energy programs set up in Northern California, say, are always happy to consult with people here in Southern California to provide advice. And they've been very helpful for us at OC Clean Power. Okay, well, what about in Orange County? Well, in Orange County, the city of Irvine happens to be the farthest along in adopting community choice energy. They actually voted last year to move forward to implement this plan. And they voted for it unanimously and with enthusiasm. And in fact, they went a step further and they voted to invite all other cities in Orange County to join Irvine's Community Choice Energy Program. All right, as you can see, we were all really happy. And I have to say, this city council meeting had the most people in it that I have ever seen. The community is really, really supportive of this. All right, so the mayor sent out letters to each city. And actually, in a surprising twist, the mayor of Costa Mesa actually showed up to Irvine City Council meeting, which is unusual. And she came in front of the city council and just said, hey, we're ready. I am ready to talk with you about setting up a CCE program. Send me that letter. I'm excited about it. Okay, and then Irvine heard back from all the cities that were interested in CCE, and we're really thrilled. A lot of cities in Orange County demonstrated interest. Altogether, actually, there were I think 15. They're shown here. There's also, I should add, Huntington Beach. They just didn't contact Irvine in time to be added to this map. Altogether, these cities like Tustin, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, Santa Ana, they add up to a lot of the power load in Orange County. And so if these cities actually end up joining together with Irvine for a community choice energy program, it will be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, community choice energy program in California. And it really, really is striking to me what the legacy of this would have. So many years and decades in the future of not releasing greenhouse gases from all the power that's used in Orange County would add up to a lot. It would do a lot of good to slow down climate change. Okay, so what are some strategies for lobbying local city officials? So these cities have indicated an interest in community choice energy, but they're just kind of, a lot of them are in the early stages of thinking about this. And what really, really helps to motivate city council members to move forward is to hear from their residents and their businesses. Do the residents and businesses want this? This really helped a lot in Irvine. So how can we do this? Well, the first thing that you can do is, it's very simple. Simply sign and circulate a petition in support of community choice energy. Now, we have petitions. We have a petition for every single city in Orange County. I think there are 36 cities. We have 36 petitions. If you shine your phone's camera on this QR code here, your phone will scan it. It will take you to a website with a list of all the cities with links to the petition for each city. If you click on that link, you can go in and sign your petition really quick. Please only sign the petition for the city that you live in. Your city council members want to hear specifically from their own residents, from their own businesses. So this is a very, very simple way to move this ahead, and we know from experience that these petitions can be great motivators for city council members. You can also come in to your city council meetings and ask city council members to talk with Irvine, to continue their discussions with Irvine about the community choice energy program. In California, any person who wants to can talk to a city council meeting for 3 minutes about any subject that is relevant to that city council. So you could go up to any meeting that your city council holds. You simply file a request to speak. A lot of times there will be something like a speaker card like this right at the entrance of the city chambers. Fill out your name and talk about what you're there to speak about. Give a brief description. Hand it to whoever looks official near the dais, and then you'll get to speak during public comment period. And you don't need to say anything fancy. You don't need to have, you won't be having a debate with them at all. You can just get up there and say, I support community choice energy. Please talk with Irvine because of, and then you give whatever reason you're personally motivated to do. Now, I realize right now with coronavirus that a lot of city council meetings are on hold, but whenever they get started up again, or if they get converted to remote meetings, this would be a great strategy. We can also just meet with individual city council members. You can do that over the phone or through a Zoom chat these days if you can't meet in person. And just tell those city council members why you're interested. All you have to do is email. There should be email addresses for each of your city council members on your city council website. Just email them, ask for a meeting. Here we are meeting with Mayor Christina Shea, and it was really, really worthwhile. She was very thoughtful, asked a lot of great questions. Generally city council members, they care a lot about their cities and they want to really investigate this issue. Okay, overall, I just want to say that I think this is a really, really great opportunity right now to help move that needle on climate change by working with Orange County. Orange County has the 9th greatest gross domestic product in the world, I think, greater than Denmark and some other countries. That represents a lot of energy, a lot of greenhouse gas emissions right now that we can cut down on significantly if we convert to community choice energy. And it will just be better for our community as a whole. I mean, who doesn't want local control and to save money and to choose your own energy providers? The kids are in support of it. These are kids from the Bonita Canyon Life Club. They really care about breathing clean air, being able to play outside. They care about their futures. It's actually very fun to lobby city council members, especially bring your kids. And I highly encourage you to at least sign the petition and get in touch with OC Clean Power through our website if you're interested in doing more. Thank you very much. Hello, I'm back now. I understand that some of you have watched my presentation. Thank you very much. And that you have questions. So we're going to have a question and answer period here that's virtual. Okay, so I'm going to read through these and we'll see. I got 23 questions and I'm going to try to cover half an hour. So we'll see how many of these I can get to. Okay, number 1, if community power uses Southern California Edison grid, how do we get power sent when SCE shuts us down or goes down? Well, that's a really good question. So what we can do, and this is what Irvine is investigating, is set up what's called microgrids. So microgrids are basically, I mean, just like the name implies, these small electrical grids that are self-contained. So there's a source of power in the same area as where the use of power is. So for instance, we could have a few square blocks where we have a power source like a set of solar cells, and then that would supply those few square blocks. And so that way, even if the SoCal Edison grid gets shut down, like say if there's a fire up in the Sierras, then that area would still get the power. And so this is something that we can start setting up, for instance, in particularly vulnerable areas like mobile home parks, or areas where we know that there are a lot of seniors who are going to need ventilators. We can start setting up the microgrids there and also in hospitals, and then move on from there. And every place there's a microgrid, you have that security. You're not dependent on the energy being sent over the large transmission lines. Okay, is this the same idea as Arcadia? With Arcadia, I'm on a 50-50 plan because I can't afford to pay more for my energy. Wish I could go 100% green. So how can community power be cheaper if we go to 100% clean energy? All right. Well, I'm not an Arcadia customer, so I don't know it from that end. But I think Arcadia is set up as like a power broker. So what they do is, and this is just my understanding, is that they'll buy what are called renewable energy certificates from power companies or power providers. And so, like, let's say there was a wind farm that produced 1 kilowatt hour of power like 10 years ago. That farm got a certificate for that particular unit of energy. Then they can go sell it to Arcadia for however much, Arcadia will pay them. And then Arcadia can turn around and say, oh, well, you signed up for renewable energy. Here, now we're delivering renewable energy to you. And they use that certificate. So basically, the energy that you're getting in your home when you pick the 50-50 plan is like 50% of that renewable energy. It's not energy that you are helping to create or that you are incentivizing wind farms to produce necessarily. It's energy that could have been produced like 10 years ago. So it's, unfortunately, the Acadia plan does not green the grid in the same way that community choice energy does. And the reason that you are paying more for renewable energy is because you do not have someone to negotiate on your behalf. You have, I'm guessing, SoCal Edison, and I don't know why they would try to make a cheaper price for you for this. Now, if there's a community choice energy, you'll have a whole city or multiple cities that will be negotiating on your behalf, and we will be able to get renewable energy right from the source, which is genuinely cheaper than conventional energy. So, it's also possible one of the reasons that you're paying more for renewable energy right now is because that renewable energy may have been bought quite a while ago when it was more expensive. So, okay. Oh, number 3, nuclear energy works well in Germany and France. Why not more in USA? All right, well, I think that probably one of the short answers is that it doesn't work so well in Japan. And we've seen what happens when there's a natural disaster. And these plants, they definitely have vulnerabilities. And one of them is there's a social element. So, if you look at San Onofre down, closer to San Diego, they're trying to shut down San Onofre, as I'm sure you're aware. They're having a real problem finding where to store the spent fuel rods. Now, these nuclear fuel rods are hazardous, and we don't want them right there on the beach, which is where SoCal Edison is planning to put them for the next 30 years or so. That means that if we have sea level rise, which we will, if we have a major storm event, there's all sorts of different events that could cause those spent fuel rods to be exposed to the environment. It's not a good place to be. So we should move them off the beach. But where to? There are very few communities in the U.S. who are willing to take spent nuclear fuel rods and then also to ship them to the community that may be willing to take it. We can't move those rods through any major populated areas. So the U.S. would have to basically build a separate rail system that would take those rods from San Onofre to the new place, maybe somewhere in Texas or something like that. This is not a great situation. So even though technically a nuclear fuel plant can provide energy and it can be carbon free, in terms of the grand scheme of things, it's something that I'm not comfortable with. And I just want to mention, I'm on Representative Mike Levin's San Onofre nuclear generator task force, where we're trying to look into how to deal with these spent fuel rods. I'm not comfortable with it in my experience with San Onofre, and I think probably many other people are not. So that's one of the things that we're thinking about for the community choice energy plan. Talking with the city of Irvine is not having nuclear power. Okay. Can we hear more about community choice, in quotes? Is it a concept or an organization? If it's an organization, who sponsors it? Is there a mission statement? How is it organized, etc.? Well, community choice is a program. It's basically, it's a program that was designed by the state of California. It's just a set of arrangements. And there's California law that says that community choice can be set up. So it's basically just an option of purchasing and distributing energy that cities have. And it's called community choice because the community chooses it. So it's not an organization. There's no mission statement. It's basically like a way of delivering energy that the state of California has allowed people to use. Okay, the collaboration among cities sounds fabulous, and I'd love to see Laguna Woods join with Irvine on community choice. My question is, as Orange County joins together to control the source of our energy, what happens with the services provided by SoCal Edison? For example, the maintenance of the power lines, control of the distribution of energy, and so on. Would we be purchasing these services from SoCal Edison? What happens when SoCal Edison loses the majority of its revenue stream to community choice? Is there a plan for taking on those background services that SCE currently provides? All right. Well, the way that community choice energy is set up, SoCal Edison does have responsibility for transmitting the power over its infrastructure, over its lines, and SoCal Edison will charge a fee for that. And so all those operations that are currently happening to maintain that infrastructure will still be covered by this fee. And for instance, for Irvine's feasibility study, when we found that Irvine could generate revenue in the $10 million range each year, that's even considering that Irvine would be paying the SoCal Energy fees to maintain the infrastructure. So SoCal Energy, in theory, says that they are fine with community choice energy because their business model supports it, that they are still making the money that they need from that particular service. Okay. Can you elaborate on the microgrid? Okay, good. I already did. Yay. Oh, is energy stored in the microgrid? If yes, how? Yes, I think that energy is stored in the microgrid, and there are different ways to store energy, and I'm not an expert on them, but there's batteries. I know that it takes a lot of batteries to store that energy, but it's possible to have them be still in the area. Like if there's a parking lot, the batteries can be underground. There's also, oh my gosh, there's so many different ways. There's if you're near a water source, there are people who are designing systems where you, during the day when you have the solar power, you pump the water up like a hill or into a water tower. And then at night when you don't have the solar energy, then you release the water back down, and then that creates energy and that supplies it. There's a bunch of different ways. It's really cool. There's a lot of engineers who are working on this problem. It's something that's captured a lot of attention, and it's really neat to hear about the different innovations people are developing. And as community energy becomes more and more popular, then there's going to be more and more financial incentive for these sorts of inventions, because there will be money in these revenue streams to invest in this development. Okay, what about energy storage as a way to provide energy when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow? Okay, I think that I just covered that. Actually, energy storage is not as big of a problem as it once was, even a few years ago. We're really improving energy storage by leaps and bounds every year. And by we, I mean they. I am not involved in that. Okay, will circumstances created by the COVID-19 pandemic help the Earth to recover, such as fewer emissions from autos, trucks, factories, possibly less clear cutting of forests for profit or sustenance? Would recovery be trackable? Yeah, I think that it is possible. So I think it depends on our collective will and our vision. And I think that this period of time has been really illuminating in terms of the environment. I think that you may have seen, well, even just going outside, back when it was still okay to, I hiked up to top of the world with my husband about a month ago. That's in Laguna Beach. And I've never seen the air so clear. It's crystal clear. And, there was just a photo of LA that I saw on social media a couple of days ago. And it was just a picture of LA from a nearby hill from Silver Lake. And it looked, I thought it was a painting. I thought it was a painting of some sort of future panorama on for some sci-fi book. It didn't seem real. You could just see everything. No smog. I mean, just seeing these images, I think, can help give us a good vision of what life could be like every day. What if every day we drove electric vehicles and we used renewable energy? This is what our world can look like. And sometimes it takes just actually being able to see it with our own eyes to kind of show what's imaginable. I mean, the environmental movement, the modern environmental movement, started in the 60s after the astronauts went to the moon and looked back and took a photo of the Earth. It's called the blue marble. You've probably seen it. It's beautiful. Up until then, people really hadn't had that perspective on the Earth. And once people all saw, everybody that ever has existed or will exist is on this planet. We're all in it together. And this is the environment that we live in. I think it really helped launch this environmental movement. And so this might be a period of time that has similar effects. And we're like, look at what happens when we don't pollute the environment. It looks like this, and we can have this. So in terms of it lasting a long time, I think it depends on policy decisions, which you can have an influence on. For instance, as we're looking at these stimulus packages from the U.S. government, and there probably will be some from the state, if as we start to rebuild after this crisis, we build green infrastructure, we specifically support businesses that adopt sustainable practices, this can be amazing. There's a lot of resources that are going into this rebuilding. Why not take this opportunity to rebuild better and rebuild greener? And this is something that your club could speak to if you wanted. But it's a matter of our choice. Okay. For the communities that have implemented community choice energy, is there evidence about how it is working? Specifically, has it had the intended impact and has it been well accepted? Well, so definitely they've all been working well. So far, as far as I know, all the community choice energy programs that have been implemented in the state of California are solvent. They're in the black. They're providing renewable energy. In fact, financially, they've done, on the whole, better than has been predicted. We just had Mayor Rex Paris, the mayor of Lancaster, California, give a webinar for Climate Action Plan. And he, by the way, is a Republican. And he talked about how easy it was to set up the program, how it's made a lot of money for them. He talked about how not only do they get the revenue from the program, but now because they are in the energy, because they're, what did he call it? An energy provider or something like that, that they now have access to all these state grants that they can apply to that previously, only SoCal Edison was able to apply to. So they're actually able to get a lot of money for greening their lights, their street lights, and EV charging stations, and creating a green transportation bus line. And he's partnering with all these businesses that have chosen to come into Lancaster to develop these sort of green initiatives. And he said that that's happened because of the Community Choice Energy Program. And he was so thrilled about it. He said, this has really changed the whole city. It's changed the vision of the city. Now they are this incredibly green, really forward-thinking city that draws a lot of businesses. And he just couldn't be happier. Okay, Professor, you spoke about local actions, but didn't mention two national actions. I know you've endorsed the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which all our OC members of Congress have sponsored. Is there a reason you don't talk about that bill, HR 763? It's getting a lot of attention, has 80 sponsors, and 9 other carbon dividend bills have been introduced since its introduction. All carbon copies on the major points, a steadily rising price on emissions, money returned to all Americans, and a border adjustment to ensure the world follows our lead. All right, yeah, all very good points. So excited about that. My talk was about community choice energy, so this act was a bit beyond the scope of my talk, and I think it's so important to be working on climate action at multiple levels. So I'm working at the pretty much the local level. One can also work at the individual level. So I know a lot of people are buying electric vehicles and solar panels for their own homes just because they believe in it. There's the state level, which is, I have to say, I'm pretty pleased with for the most part. And then the federal level. And so I think we need to be like firing on all cylinders on this. And so I'm so glad that you are a proponent of HR 763. And you're right, I signed on to it, and I talked to Katie Porter about it and urged her to sign on. I'm so glad that she signed on. Actually, Katie Porter is my neighbor. She lives around the corner from me. And so I was walking my dogs one morning, and I, was walking them past Katie's house, as I often do. And it just happened to be right about the time that the parents were driving their kids to school. And so I was walking by her house, and she pulls out in her minivan with her kids in the car, and she goes to go on her way to school. And then I think she saw me, and she stepped on the brakes, and the van's screeches to a halt. She rolls down the window. She's like, Kathleen. And I'm like, yeah, what? And she's like, I need to talk to you about HR 763. I need to ask you, all these points. And she just rattled off. She's like, I think that, there's this with the transportation I want to find out about. There's this threshold I'm not sure about. She's just like, I really want your opinion. And I was like, okay, Katie, I don't know right now. I'm like, I did not expect this when I was walking the dogs. But I will look into all of this and let you know. And she did have her staff member get in touch with me and sent me all of her questions. And then I looked it all up and responded and helped her. She wanted to know, what if people push back on it? Because she lives in a purple district. What are some of the things that she could say in support of it? And so I was really happy to be able to contribute to that. And I am fully supportive of it. It's just that I don't want to neglect community choice energy in favor of talking about HR 763. All of you are such good advocates for it out there in Citizens Climate Lobby that I am very happy to leave that in your hands. Okay. It mentions there are firms that will sign, install, and manage energy sources. Can she provide a list of these firms? Let's see. Install, manage. I don't know exactly what this is specifically referring to, but I will say there are a lot of firms that in this area that will help set up community choice energy programs and even manage them if the city wants or the joint powers agreement chooses. And you can go to, I think it's cleanpower.org, and they will have a list of these firms. And moreover, if you really want to, you can like contact an existing community choice energy program. Like, so in cleanpower.org, there will be a list of the programs, and you can ask them. You can just write to them and say, like, I'm very interested in what firms you had to help you install this, or what firms run it. And they will help you with a referral. And that's one of the nice things about this community, is that the community choice energy programs tend to collaborate very well, and they have a structure to do this. And so if you want information like that, there's definitely a community that can get that for you. Okay. Will these firms also provide the feasibility study? Yeah, and so they can be different firms. So the firm, for instance, that Irvine hired to do the feasibility study, experts in doing feasibility studies for community choice energy programs, but they don't necessarily manage those programs in a way that is kind of helpful, because we want to be sure that the people who do the feasibility study are separate from the people who might manage it, because then, you want to be sure that the people who do the feasibility study have independent interests. And so, but some of them do. Some of them will do the feasibility study and manage the community choice energy program. It's a mix. Okay. Interesting. Will SoCal Edison work with our village, or HOA, if our city is not prepared to take action? Our village utilized 90% of the energy utilized in the city. We have had success with SCE in the past, particularly if their program to purchase streetlights. Interesting. Well, I don't know. I don't know if SoCal Energy would work with the HOA. I think that if your HOA does use that much energy, holy cow, that's good. You have a lot of buying power. You might be able to, if you signed a letter of support for community choice energy and sent it to your city council, if you really have that big of a footprint, that might really have a big impression on your city council. That might help a lot. Okay. Are there banks willing to loan cities or villages money at the current low prevailing interest rates that she knows of? Yeah. So there are. And that's one of the nice things about getting into community choice energy right now, is that there's been enough community choice energy programs in the state for the banks to look at to see their records, and then they consistently have good financial records, that it's not considered a big risk for these banks to loan the money. And so likely, for instance, Irvine would get financing for a loan to start this off. And the loan would be for something like $10 million for Irvine, because Irvine's a big city. It would likely be less for another city, or even less if the other city joined Irvine's program. But there are banks that are willing to do that. Not a problem. Oh, okay. UCI has its own microgrid. It has the skills to assist in doing feasibility studies, and it surely would be a great thesis opportunity for their grad students. Have they considered making such resources available for this purchase? Well, we did. Right. UCI has its own microgrid. So that's an example. We actually make the power here on campus that we use. It's pretty cool. It's also nice because when the power goes off to lots of other places in Orange County, I live on campus, so we still have our power. We did ask different centers and faculty if they might be willing to do the feasibility study, and they didn't seem too responsive to that. So it is a kind of a big thing to do, and the companies that do them are really experts at doing it, and they know the community choice energy landscape. So I would recommend another company to do it rather than necessarily UCI. But there are definitely great thesis opportunities for grad students, and in lots of different ways. And I know that there are quite a few grad students at UCI who are very invested in this. And we have some that will go with us to meetings with city council members, and they are doing their dissertations on related topics, and they want to leverage that. Okay, I think that I have probably used up my time, and maybe I'll just take one last one just to cap off. So I'll do number 23. This is the last one on the list. Can you speculate on how the COVID-19 pandemic will affect near-term progress of Irvine and other cities towards CCE, other than to make city councils meet electronically instead of in person? Well, this is a concern that we have, just like I think anybody else who's trying to make progress on anything in Orange County that isn't COVID related. It's just necessarily slowing down. And, I think a lot of our city councils, looking at their communications, they are really the boots on the ground in this pandemic. And so they're out there, they're trying to make sure that renters are not being evicted, that people who work in grocery stores are allowed to wear masks. And that's, I think, taking by far the bulk of their time. And so those of us who are advocating for community choice energy, we're trying to be very sensitive to that. At the same time, I know that the Irvine City Council is still moving forward with the same timeline that they originally set, which is a very ambitious timeline. I don't want to say ambitious, a very enthusiastic timeline for getting community choice energy online. So they're moving forward, and I'm glad about that. But in terms of meeting with other city council members and so on, it's very hard for us to keep doing that level of engagement. And so we're doing things like, this sort of video, which I really appreciate your club hosting. We're having other webinars, we're making informative videos, anything we can do that provides content and support for city council members that they can then kind of grab and make use of when they have the time. And we want to be there at their convenience because we recognize what a hard job, an important job they have right now. So it is slowing down in terms of bringing working with other cities, but in terms of Irvine, it seems like the timeline is progressing as usual. So I'm glad about that. And we're still staying in touch with the Irvine electeds and staff to make sure that we can support however we can. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate these excellent questions. I'm so sorry that I couldn't get to all of them. I hope that they've been helpful, and I hope that you have a really great Earth Day, and that I hope that this is useful for you going forward. And thanks a lot for your interest, and take care and stay safe and healthy. Bye.